In the labyrinth of life, I stumbled upon a truth darker than night. The love I thought unbreakable was fractured by my wife Linda's clandestine affair, a shadow dance of love and lies. How could you? My voice whispered against the storm of betrayal. Our shared dreams were now remnants of a past marred by secrets. This revelation, a cruel twist of fate, set me on a journey of self-discovery, love reborn, and a future unforeseen. This is my story. Enjoy watching it unfold. There it was again. As I stepped out of my car, I felt the same eerie sensation that had haunted me for days. I shook it off, glancing around with a nervous laugh. Then, disregarding the possibility of looking foolish, I sprang into the air and landed facing the opposite direction. Aside from a few onlookers laughing at me, there was no one nearby who seemed even slightly interested in me. After gathering myself and regaining my dignity, I entered the packed mall. Despite being busy, I needed one more gift to make this Christmas truly spectacular. Most of the gifts had been purchased online and shipped. I chuckled at the thought of her unintentionally wrapping her own presents, believing they were for someone else. I laughed again, recalling how she had grumbled and called me lazy. She had no idea that almost everything that came into the house was hers. Also, because I had her wrap them in unopened shipping boxes, she had no clue what any of them were. This was our third Christmas together, and she deserved everything I could give her. But what about the last item? It was something she'd been wanting for quite some time. As much as I wanted to give her everything she desired, she'd have to settle for this. Even this couldn't be considered official or legitimate. It would have to be something just between the two of us. It was also the last vestige of my past being erased as we looked ahead. I understood Khalila's desires and dreams, but returning home was the one thing I couldn't give her. I left the store, shaking my head. Inflation was an absolute pain. The smarmy salesman in the store deserved a foot up his ass. He was all grins and found me exactly what I was looking for promptly. He inquired if I wanted a payment plan, and I simply smiled back at him. "Okay, sir," he said, thinking about his commission. "That will be 4.83 cents. Additional taxes?" My mind popped, and I stared at him like he was insane. "You are kidding, right?" I asked. He shook his head, but I had just bought one of these a few years ago, and I let out a sigh. "The price goes up every year, sir," remarked the man. "Think of it as an investment." "But this is more than I paid for a second car back then," I replied. "And it wasn't that long ago. So how much did a Model T cost in? What year are we talking about again?" He smirked. 2000, I responded. "Sir, that was 20 years ago," he said, laughing. "Back then, everything was cheaper. It's a whole new universe, Gramps. Do you want it?" "Why are you calling me Gramps?" I snarled. "I'm just 40, and you are an asshole." "Maybe so," he said, smirking, "but I'm the jerk who has something you desire." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. It wasn't the first time I'd dealt with an obnoxious salesperson, and it wouldn't be the last. "Fine, I'll take it," I muttered, pulling out my credit card. His grin widened as he rang up the purchase, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of resignation. But this gift, this final touch, was worth it. As I left the store, the weight of the past few weeks lifted slightly. I thought about how much I loved her and how much this gesture meant. Linda's betrayal had been a devastating blow, but it had also opened my eyes to what truly mattered. I drove home, the package safely tucked in the back seat, and thought about the look on Khalila's face when she opened it. The holidays would be different this year, a blend of bittersweet memories and new beginnings. But for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild and find a new kind of happiness. You know you want it. I know you want it. I can always tell. I'm the best salesman in this store, and experience tells me you won't leave without it. You must have it. "Are you sure you're the best salesperson in the store?" I asked. He smirked again before nodding. "That's great news for me," I said. "Why?" asked. "Because you can't be the best unless you have someone to compare yourself to." I smirked as much as he did. "You are right, jackass. I'm not leaving the store without it, but I don't have to purchase anything from you." I moved across the store, leaving him standing. I smiled at a girl who stood in front of another counter. "Can you ring something up for me, miss?" I asked. She grinned and accompanied me to the other counter, where the greatest salesperson in the store stared in surprise. Buby. Bah, he murmured. Sir, this item is on sale, she explained. The sale brings the price down to 4,000 flat, she said with a laugh. And once I add my special customer discount, you'll save an additional 5% by taking advantage of the offer, so it will cost $3,800. Wait a minute, I'll be back. She went into the store's back. Boo, blabbed the greatest salesman in the shop. Sir, it's Christmas, she said upon her return. That's the rock bottom best price I can get you, but my boss agreed that we can eat the taxes too. Wrap it up, I said, giving her my credit card. While she ran my card, I went through my wallet. Thanks so much, I responded as she handed me the bag and my card back. I slipped her $2.50s when she asked, not sure whether the store accepted tipping. Haley, you're an angel, I told her, reading her name tag. Whenever I come into this store, I'm going to ask for you, but… Bubba. He continued to be the top salesman in the store. Bye-bye, jerk, I said as I passed him. How much commission have you just lost? Strangely, while I was inside the mall, I no longer felt like I was being followed, but as soon as I saw my car, it was back. I had genuinely started to believe it was psychological. Perhaps I was overcome with guilt. After all, I lived an almost ideal life, but I had committed a major moral transgression along the way. Actually, there had been two of them. I am referring to sins, and while I don't regret one of them, I did feel guilty about both. I was certain that my sense of being followed had a lot to do with the guilt. I was raised to be a good man. There is also a moral dimension, so this is my act of selfishness and fury. At the very least, the guilt I felt but never articulated or apologized for tormented me. My automobile always cheered me up. I always grinned when I saw that car. Perhaps that was why I couldn't leave it behind as easily as I did my previous life. She no longer looked the same as when I first bought her. The 213 Boss 302 came in only a few colors. Even among the new generation of Mustangs, she was an oddity. Unlike the Mustang GT and the ultimately potent GT 500, they were only produced for 2 years. Even though the car was naturally aspirated, it was built for track days and negotiating twisties or road courses. So while the 500 easily thrashed her on the drag strip, she outscored the Shelby on the road course. I loved the automobile, so much so that I had no intention of leaving her behind when I left my prior life. Conventional wisdom and common reason encouraged me to leave her behind. Who brings a showy, limited edition muscle car when they go on the run? It would be like drawing a target on myself, but I loved her too much to abandon her. So, like me, she had to wear a disguise. As previously stated, the Boss was available in a restricted range of colors. There was also the fact that the Boss had a unique stripe package. So, without the stripes and painted as red as a prostitute's lipstick, only a true Mustang fan could identify her. It was basically the same thing as hiding in plain sight, but with a different twist. The individuals looking for me knew I drove a black Boss 302. And the Boss did not come in that color. That wasn't me. It had worked for the entire time I'd been running, so I didn't question it that day. I just got in my car, attributed my sense of being followed to guilt, and went home. I weaved in and out of traffic, leaving only the deep and magnificent exhaust note as a testament to my passing. A few moments later, I stepped out of the car, and the feeling of being followed returned. It clung to me like a shadow, unseen but ever present. As I reached my doorstep, I couldn't shake the feeling that my past was catching up with me. But for now, I pushed those thoughts aside. I had a Christmas to prepare for and a love to nurture, even if my path was littered with the remnants of my former life. As I stepped into the condo I was renting, I marveled at the sheer joy of being able to drive my car all year round. Back in Michigan, my automobile would be wrapped in a car cover and stored in a heated garage for another 4 to 5 months. I removed my light jacket and hurled it upon the sofa, clapping my fists together loudly and violently. She appeared, gripping the edge of the doorway to the room she had just left. It was amazing how her reaction to seeing me mirrored mine when I saw my car outside the mall. The way she stared at me and the amused grin on her face as she stretched and preened in the doorway reminded me of a big cat. She yawned and looked at me as if she had no idea I was there, despite the fact that we both knew she had responded to the sound of my claps. Is that how it works now? She asked. You simply clap your hands, and I'm supposed to come out here and hand you some? I never said anything about it, I stuttered. Oh, no, buddy, she cooed. It's too late to change anything now. After all, that's how you got me here. She gestured with both of her index fingers at the tiny hump on her lower tummy that detracted from the slender yet voluptuous perfection of her 22-year-old figure. At 40 and 18 years older than her, the typical person would have been surprised that we were together. I mean, shit, I still was. She was also a huge source of the guilt I held. I could sense the condemnation and fury in most people's voices as they described my circumstance. You abandoned your 20-year-old wife to run off with a girl who was just a few weeks younger than your daughter with no explanation or warning. Do you have no shame? There it was. My guilt's voice rang out loud and clear. It's pretty clear that one of us is unenlightened, she replied, jolting me out of my guilt. One of us believes that as soon as you arrive home, we'll end up on that couch, just fucking. The last two words were delivered more like a growl than genuine speech. But I never said so, I responded. Okay, so it was me, she said, smiling. Scott, I don't care what you said, thought, or were about to say. I've spent the entire day looking at words on the television. I do not need any fucking words from you. I want to take action. I want you with me. I am yours. More crucially, you're mine. I'm pregnant, horny, and I want you now. So get on that couch, mister. What about the bed, which we're still paying for? I questioned as she approached me. I have a lot of baby stuff and some presents I was wrapping spread out on the bed, and we don't have time to move them before I explode, she said with a sigh. And we're going to go really nasty this time. I stared at her and wondered, this is not the first time. How has she transformed from a nice 19-year-old college girl to the sexually charged woman that I was nearly terrified of? Kalila was little and stunning. Her pale skin, freckles, and blue eyes contrasted with her waist-length raven's wing black hair. It's your fault, she complained. You didn't come home for lunch, and you're 20 minutes late now. I faltered, remembering the greatest salesperson from the store I had just left. I don't want to hear it, she said. Just get over here and kiss, man. We were drawn together like magnets, yet we froze as someone knocked on our door. The voice was really loud, female, and unfortunately, familiar. Kalila went silent as I placed one pointed finger in front of my lips. She also returned to our home office where she had been working when I initially came in. Kalila works as a copy editor. Her assignments are emailed to her, allowing her to work from home. Scott, I know you're in there, said the voice, growing louder. My private investigators have been monitoring you for several days. They finally gave me your address. We need to talk. This does not have to get ugly. Many things have changed. It may not be as horrible as you think it is. You can either allow me in. Alternatively, I can start chatting about our business in the hallway. Do you really want your neighbors to know what you did? At that time, all I could say was, shit. I opened the door and glared at her. She took this as an invitation and pushed her way past me. She gazed around the apartment. There were no personal belongings displayed in the living room or kitchen, and I had no intention of informing her that Kalila was with me. You look surprisingly good for a man who abandoned his wife and child, she went on to say. I thought you had transformed into some kind of monster. I mean, the man I married would never have abandoned his family. I wanted to say something as she gazed at me, but I couldn't find the right words. Linda had changed. She'd gained a few pounds after giving birth to our daughter Annabelle. She had never lost the baby weight. In truth, it had risen throughout the years, but I didn't care. I loved her. Everything was fine. But now, staring into Linda's eyes, the guilt and memories overwhelmed me. I couldn't escape the labyrinth of my choices and their consequences. Linda, once the center of my world, was now an unwelcome ghost from a past I was desperately trying to leave behind. We were a typical suburban family for a while. We discussed having another child, but it never happened. Our sex life experienced a severe dip as Annabelle grew older, possibly around middle school. We were never one of those couples that burnt their sheets, but we gradually reduced it to once or twice a week, then once or twice a month. I never mentioned anything, but I received the impression Linda was going through something. She had always been an outlier at school, and growing older didn't seem to help. Being fat must have been terrible for her self-esteem, I thought to myself. We had actually met through my band. Our drummer had graduated and saw the band as little more than a means to collect chicks and beer money. Linda marched into our rehearsal room and told me she wanted to be our drummer before the stool behind the drum equipment even got chilly. I chuckled because we had several extremely talented drummers lined up to audition for us. But I didn't want to anger the feminists on campus, so I agreed to give her a listen. She wasn't the worst drummer I'd ever heard, but she was far from average. In fact, out of the 3 drummers I was considering, she was probably 6th. That meant I had 3 top candidates, 1 or 2 of whom I had already passed over because they were not good enough. Then Linda. I was trying to think of a nice way to break it to her, but I was confident she already knew. Okay, I'm probably not what you're looking for in terms of pure musical skill, she went on to say, but you can work with me to get me where you want me to go. There are additional factors to consider. Like what, I asked. Music is more than music, she explained. There's presentation, gimmicks, and sexual appeal. Think about it. Instead of being just another college band, you'd be the band with the sexy chick drummer. Guys would come and see us just to check whether my boobs would show. Plus, just for working with me and helping me improve. She moved closer to me as she talked, her face near to mine. I would fuck the living shit out of you anytime you wanted it. She held true to her word. Linda had the tightest pussy I'd ever experienced. Despite the fact that we were both college students, sometimes I felt like I was the only one who had ever fucked her. It was an interesting arrangement, and I was curious what she would do when I graduated that spring. However, pondering about it was a waste of time because we discovered Linda was pregnant shortly before my graduation. We proceeded as usual and informed our parents. We told mine first, and they were encouraging yet cautious. I'm not sure my mother actually liked Linda. Telling her parents was another matter entirely. "Mom, Dad, this is Scott," she announced. Both of her parents smiled. Her father shook my hand, and her mother hugged me. I'm pregnant," she explained. "Yes, Jesus," yelled her father. He leaped up and gave his wife a high five. He shook my hand again and began to rub my shoulders. It was an unusual reaction to meeting a man you'd never heard of who had gotten your daughter pregnant. They were even more surprised when I got down on one knee and asked Linda to marry me. I don't believe they were as astonished as Linda was. Everyone we knew was astonished. Our life together, however, didn't play out as seamlessly as those early days. Linda's insecurities grew alongside her waistline, and I felt the distance between us widen. We were living a life that looked perfect on the outside, but inside, it was riddled with cracks. We moved through our days like actors playing roles in a script that had long lost its charm. Linda's struggle with her self-image seemed to permeate every aspect of our relationship, casting a shadow over what once was a bright and hopeful union. She tried to maintain a brave face, especially for Annabelle, but I could see the toll it took on her. It wasn't just her weight, it was a deeper, gnawing dissatisfaction that I couldn't quite reach or remedy. Our once lively and spontaneous interactions had become mechanical and strained, filled with unspoken resentments and unmet needs. As our physical intimacy dwindled, so did our emotional connection. The bedroom, once a sanctuary of our shared secrets and passions, became a cold and distant place. Linda's initiative in our early days had transformed into a reluctant compliance, and I found myself grappling with the guilt of my wandering thoughts and desires. Reflecting on those days, I realized how much we both had changed. The vibrant young woman who had boldly walked into our rehearsal room and captured my attention had morphed into a shadow of her former self. And I, the once eager and ambitious musician, had settled into a life that felt more like a trap than a dream fulfilled. Despite all this, there were moments when the old Linda would resurface, a smile here, a laugh there, a glimpse of the girl I had fallen in love with. Those moments were fleeting but precious, reminders of what we once had and what we had lost. And then there was Kalila, who had become the center of my universe in a way that both thrilled and terrified me. With Kalila, everything felt new and exhilarating. Our age difference, a constant source of judgment from others, didn't matter to us. We connected on a level that transcended the physical, though the physical was undeniably powerful. Her energy, her youth, her unabashed desire for me reignited a spark that I thought had long been extinguished. But with that spark came the shadows of guilt and shame. I knew what people said about me, about us. I could hear their voices in my head, each judgmental whisper cutting deeper than the last. The truth was, I had left Linda and Annabelle not because I didn't love them, but because I felt suffocated by the life we had built, a life that no longer felt like mine. Now, standing in the condo with the weight of my decisions pressing down on me, I looked at Kalila and saw not just the future, but a chance for redemption. She represented hope, a new beginning. Yet, I couldn't escape the past, and the knock on the door was a stark reminder of that. Linda's voice, filled with a mix of hurt and determination, brought everything crashing back. "Scott, I know you're in there," she called out, louder this time. "My private investigators have been monitoring you for several days. They finally gave me your address. We need to talk. This does not have to get ugly. Many things have changed. It may not be as horrible as you think it is. You can either allow me in. Alternatively, I can start chatting about our business in the hallway. Do you really want your neighbors to know what you did?" I opened the door, and Linda pushed her way inside. She looked around, taking in the impersonal decor of the living room. I had no intention of informing her that Kalila was with me. "You look surprisingly good for a man who abandoned his wife and child," she continued. "I thought you had transformed into some kind of monster. I mean, the man I married would never have abandoned his family." I wanted to say something, to explain, but the words stuck in my throat. Linda had changed, too. She'd gained a few pounds after giving birth to Annabelle and had never lost the baby weight. Over the years it had accumulated, but I didn't care about that. I loved her, or at least I had loved the woman she used to be. But now, staring into Linda's eyes, the guilt and memories overwhelmed me. I couldn't escape the labyrinth of my choices and their consequences. Linda, once the center of my world, was now an unwelcome ghost from a past I was desperately trying to leave behind. This includes her best buddies. I attributed it to Linda's love of music, and like most wannabe rock stars, she'd never considered having a family or anything other than the rock and roll lifestyle. That's what I thought. But Linda's behavior was always strange, so when she never touched a drumstick again after we married, I never gave it much attention. We were just another normal suburban couple with a cherished daughter. Surprisingly, many of our friends, both hers and mine, responded strangely. Several of them laughed. It gave me the strangest feeling. It was almost as though they knew something I didn't. Others simply shook their heads and shifted their gaze skyward, as if imploring God to tell them something they couldn't or wouldn't. But not being a fool, I gave it considerable thought, and what I ended up with was not pretty. It all came down to how easily Linda started fucking me. Perhaps she was also banging a handful of other males. So, I asked her about it. She burst into laughter and couldn't stop. Every time she looked at me, she laughed again. After she calmed down, she sat down next to me and gazed into my eyes. "Scott, this wasn't what I had planned," she stated sincerely. "I'm sure it wasn't what you had intended either. I mean, the thing between us, it just came out of nowhere. We progressed from strangers to FWB bandmates, and even when I officially joined the band, we continued to fuck. Scott, I have to be honest with you now." My pulse raced as I waited for the other shoe to drop. "This is kind of embarrassing," she admitted. "I'm sorry I never told you, but you were kind of stupid," I said. "Trusting and dumb. I thought I was talking," she explained. "Scott, you are not foolish, and your trust in me is one of the things that keeps us going. I was about to tell you something. That I'm special to you," I screamed. "When we fuck, it's like cotton candy, angels, and unicorns, whereas the other guys just screw you, right?" She began laughing again. "I believe you are going through something, Scott, so I will give you one more chance. I've been trying to tell. Look, Scott, you are the first guy I ever fucked. Since we started, no other male has touched me. You are the only guy I've ever had. And..." The top of my head flew off, and I suddenly felt terrible for accusing her. "You were a virgin?" I was nearly in tears. I collapsed. The next thing I knew, she was hugging me. "What's wrong, Scott?" she asked. "Don't you understand?" I croaked. You gave me a very wonderful gift, and I made it into a fuck. You should have told me. Scott, I was embarrassed, she added. Being a virgin is unusual for people our age. People look at you sideways, and the first thing that comes to mind is that if no one has fucked you by that point, there must be something wrong with you. Okay, you were my first. It doesn't matter because I also want you to be my last, and my only man, for life. I was floored. Scott, forget about my dumbass friends, she smiled. I am responsible for all of that garbage. I've told most of them for as long as I've known them that I'd never marry or have children, and now it appears that I'm the first to do either. Let's not worry about what others think. Instead, let's live our lives. Let's nurture our child and create a future we can be proud of. Linda's words hit me like a ton of bricks. Despite my doubts and suspicions, she was opening up in a way I had never expected. Her vulnerability disarmed me, and I realized that we had both been carrying the weight of our own insecurities and fears. It was time to shed those burdens and start fresh, together. You're right, I said, my voice steadying. Let's focus on us and our family. We have something special here, and I don't want to lose it. Linda smiled, her eyes filled with a warmth that melted away the remnants of my anger and doubt. Thank you, Scott. I love you. I love you too, I replied, pulling her into a tight embrace. Let's make this work. In that moment, we both made a silent promise to each other and to our daughter, Annabelle. We would face whatever challenges came our way, together. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but we were determined to walk it hand in hand, leaving the ghosts of our past behind. As we sat there, holding each other, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Linda and I had a long journey ahead, but for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. We had a chance to rebuild our lives, stronger and more united than ever before, marry and do ourselves. Annabelle grew up to be a beautiful, well-adjusted girl who was extremely popular. She and I were quite close, and her best friend, Kalila, was like a second daughter to me. Kalila spent a lot of time with us. Her mother worked long hours as a nursing assistant at a local hospital. Kalila had to, because her father, an aggressive drunk, had abandoned them before she was 4 years old. A succession of stepfathers ensued, none of whom were worth a damn. Annabelle leaving for college affected everything. Linda and I grew distant when she left the house. A further reduction in our sex life drove us even further apart. Then one day I returned home and discovered something I never expected. Walking into my house, I noticed sounds coming from the bedroom that I hadn't heard in years. It had been weeks since we had sex, and Linda hadn't been this outspoken in years. But it wasn't just that. Her arousal level was really high. The entire place smelled of sex, and there was a trail of her clothing beginning in the doorway, with another item or two strewn haphazardly throughout the living room and heading up the stairs. It was a design I had seen before. She had used it on me when we were younger, back when she still loved me. I recalled us rushing home together. She had halted just inside the threshold and opened her blouse. She'd thrown her arms around me, pressing those enormous pillow-like breasts against my chest and kissing me until I was dizzy. When we came up for air, she smiled and threw her blouse on the sofa, showing them to me. "I want you to feel them," she gushed, knowing the answer already. I'd batted and gripped the lace-covered mountains until my dick was as hard as a diamond. Then I tried to remove her bra, only to find that she shoved me away and ran for the stairs. At the foot of the stairs, she halted and smiled at me before removing the bra she had been so determined to keep. Just seeing her boobs got me even hotter. I needed to have her. "Scott, come over here and play with my titties some more," she said with a smile. She massaged my dick on the stairs, almost making me pass out. Her nipples were speaking to me. I couldn't take my hands off of them. With one hand, I went under her skirt to discover that her underwear was soaked. "Stop that," she complained. "You're nasty." She liked teasing me, but sometimes I wasn't sure if she was serious or not. She'd grip my pants again to tease me, then shimmy out of her skirt. I loved when she turned around and showed me her large round ass. I'd follow it up the stairs, only to discover the same drenched panties in the doorway of our bedroom. When I entered the room, I discovered her waiting for me, naked as a jaybird. It was all up to me after that. Linda was amazing at teasing and seducing people, but that was all. When it came to the actual intercourse, she was far more reserved. She was more of the lie down and take it sort. So that day, I knew exactly what I'd find if I climbed those steps. Everything made sense then. I understood the signs I had missed. But that day, as I ascended the stairs, the sounds grew clearer. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached the top. There, in our bedroom, was Linda, but she wasn't alone. She was with another man, someone I didn't recognize. They were entwined in a way that left no doubt about what was happening. The shock paralyzed me for a moment, and then anger surged through me. Linda looked up and saw me standing in the doorway. Her eyes widened in horror. "Scott, I can explain," she stammered, scrambling to cover herself. "Explain," I spat out, my voice trembling with rage. "Explain this?" I gestured wildly to the scene before me. The man, whoever he was, had the decency to look ashamed as he quickly gathered his clothes and bolted out of the room. Linda, on the other hand, was in tears, trying to reach out to me. "Scott, please, just listen," she pleaded. But I was beyond listening. The betrayal cut too deep. "How long, Linda?" I demanded. "How long has this been going on?" She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "A few months," she admitted softly. "A few months," I repeated, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. I felt a cold, heavy weight settle in my chest. "Why, Linda? Why did you do this?" "I don't know," she cried. "I was lonely, and you were distant. I didn't know how to reach you anymore." "And this is how you decided to fix it?" I asked, incredulous. "By sleeping with someone else?" Linda sobbed, but I couldn't find it in myself to comfort her. The trust we once had was shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. I turned away, unable to look at her any longer. "I need some time to think," I said, my voice hollow. "I can't deal with this right now." I left the house, slamming the door behind me. As I drove aimlessly through the streets, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The love, the laughter, the struggles, and now this betrayal. It felt like my world had crumbled around me. I pulled over to the side of the road, resting my head on the steering wheel. I couldn't stop the tears that flowed freely down my face. The pain was overwhelming, but beneath it all, there was a flicker of resolve. I had to figure out what to do next, for Annabelle, for myself, and for whatever future lay ahead. It was a long road ahead, and I didn't know where it would lead. But one thing was clear: things would never be the same again. Why she no longer taunted me. I understood why our sex life was easier to track with a calendar rather than a watch. She had found herself another man. She wasn't having sex with me because she was giving him her all. My heart was pounding so hard in my chest that I could scarcely feel anything else. My rage grew so strong that I wanted to kill him. I wanted to kill her too, but I could not murder her. She was Annabelle's mother, and I adored my daughter above all. I wondered who he was and why she thought he was better than me, but in the end, who he was irrelevant, at least not for me. Apparently, I was the one who did not matter. With Annabelle away at school, I decided to do what I had always done. I'd give Linda whatever she wanted. I would walk away so that she could be with him. I left the house to call her. I informed her that I had a work issue and would not be home till the following evening. "Okay, honey," she said, struggling to suppress the delight in her voice. "See you tomorrow. Perhaps we can accomplish something exceptional." "You bet," I replied sadly. I didn't need one of her lame mercy fucks after she spent the entire night screwing whoever she had up there. I spent the remainder of the afternoon making plans. I transferred all of my money to separate accounts. I've heard that in a divorce, everything should be divided 50-50, but she could stay in the house till we figured everything out, and I'd have to deal with the hassle of finding and establishing a residence. Back in my office, I browsed our corporate website. Fortunately, our company had offices and operations around the country. I applied for a position in a southern state and continued with my preparations. I had to work quickly, and my rage and contempt for Linda only grew stronger that night. There were a few things I needed to straighten out before I left, but all I wanted to do was stay on my feet and keep moving. One of the most serious issues was with my automobiles. There was no way I was leaving my Mustang behind, yet I could hardly put anything in its little trunk. I had intended to pack all I could into my SUV and rent a trailer to tow my Mustang behind it. The problem I ran into was that several of the U-Haul locations wanted to charge me an arm and a leg to return the trailer to this region, and I didn't want to drive all that distance twice, especially considering I didn't really know where I was going to stay. But if I had to, I would simply pay it. Little did I know that wouldn't be an issue. The next morning, I watched as Linda walked out of the house and gleefully entered my SUV, derailing my intentions. I instantly called her and said, "Good morning." She sounded exhausted and lively at the same time. Whoever she was fucking had her all lit up. "Honey, I just called to tell you not to take my truck," I blurted out. "I shouldn't take the Mustang on a long road trip. My check engine light is on. I'm going to have to put it in the shop." "Sorry, Scott," she replied nonchalantly. "I already left. I'll be back late. Can you manage?" I clenched my fist and took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, I'll manage. Just be careful with it." As soon as I hung up, I began to pack up the essentials in the Mustang: clothes, important documents, and a few personal items. I called a friend and arranged to store the rest of my belongings at his place until I could come back for them. The Mustang's trunk was small, but I made it work. I had to move quickly. With everything packed, I took one last look at the house that held so many memories, both good and bad. I had built a life here, but it was time to leave it behind. I got into the Mustang and started the engine. The familiar roar gave me a sense of determination. I pulled out of the driveway and drove towards the unknown future, my mind racing with possibilities and uncertainties. As I drove, the reality of my situation began to sink in. Linda had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. I couldn't let her betrayal define me. I had to find a new path, one that would lead to healing and happiness. The road ahead was long, but for the first time in a while, I felt a glimmer of hope. The open road stretched out before me, a symbol of freedom and new beginnings. I didn't know what awaited me in the new state, but I was ready to face it. I drove with purpose, leaving the past behind and embracing the promise of a brighter future. "Shop, so when you leave, take your car." "Oh crap," she exclaimed. "All right, honey. You'll have to decide one day which of us is more essential to you. You can't spoil me in that car." The next 20 minutes were amazing. I watched Linda repeatedly try to start her car. Finally, the engine roared to life, emitting a large puff of black smoke not only from the exhaust, but also from beneath the vehicle. She pulled off slowly down our street, the engine sounding like it was about to stall at any moment. As soon as she left the street, I parked the Mustang in front of the house and began loading the SUV. My biggest challenge was deciding what not to take. I'd been living in this place for too long, gathering stuff. I had to remind myself that there were stores wherever I went. When I finished packing, I called my uncle, who lived across town, and asked for a favor. I drove the Mustang to his place, and he took me back home. I followed him back to his house, leaving the SUV in the driveway. I drove the Mustang 90 miles to East Lansing for one last visit with my daughter. It was impossible for me to leave without seeing her. I told her what I was doing, but not why. Annabelle and I were close, but I didn't want to put her in the position of trying not to tell Linda why I left. There was also the fact that I felt embarrassed about it. What guy wants to explain to everyone that his wife is fucking another guy? Strangely, it did not appear. She accepted it much more easily than I had imagined. "Is she also being a bitch to you, Daddy?" she asked. "I was wondering how long you'd take it, but maybe this is just what she needs. Must change her attitude and realize that if she continues to treat us poorly, she will end herself alone." I hugged her and assured her that she had nothing to worry about. I'd still cover all of her expenditures. She already had a credit card that I was paying for, and I could load money into her debit card using the banking app on my phone. I'd have a new phone number in a few days, and I'd call or text her as soon as I received it. In the interim, she might call or text my existing phone number. I'd blocked her mother, but not her. I figured I could spare the time required to take her and her roommate out to lunch one last time. I smiled at Kalila, who felt like a second daughter to me. Surprisingly, she did not grin back. I attributed it to the quirkiness and mood swings that women in their 20s experience. I encouraged her to join us for lunch, but she declined, saying she had too much to do and would see me when we returned. My objective had been to slip her some money and ensure that she could contact me if she needed it, but she looked at me like she was mad at me. She took out her phone and began making a call. Too late, I understood that in many respects, what I was doing was quite similar to what her father had done. Sure, I'd make sure Annabelle was okay first, but I left without shoving my foot in Linda's ass, but it was close. Annabelle and I had a wonderful lunch. Unfortunately, Kalila was nowhere to be found when we returned. "Dad, I think she heard us," Annabelle said. "Yeah, I got that idea too," I answered. "She undoubtedly believes I'm as bad as her father. I hope she understands someday." "Dad, you really have that one wrong," she said, laughing. "I probably shouldn't tell you this, so keep it under your hat, but Kalila has a huge crush on you." "When did this happen?" I asked, incredulous. "Honestly, for as long as I can remember," Annabelle replied, still laughing. "She's always looked up to you, even more than she did to her own father. And with how things are now, she probably doesn't know how to process seeing you leave." I stood there, dumbfounded. I had always thought of Kalila as a second daughter, someone who needed guidance and support. The idea that she had feelings for me was completely unexpected. I don't know what to say," I stammered. "Just be there for her, Dad. She's going through a lot too," Annabelle advised. "Maybe you can talk to her before you leave. Make sure she knows you're not abandoning her too." "You're right," I said, nodding. "I'll try to catch her before I go." Annabelle hugged me tightly. "I love you, Dad. Don't be too hard on yourself." "I love you too, sweetheart," I replied, holding her close. "Take care of yourself and keep in touch, okay?" With a heavy heart, I drove back to my uncle's place. My mind raced with thoughts of Kalila and everything Annabelle had said. I knew I needed to address the situation, but it had to wait. I had to get everything in order first. The following morning, I called Kalila. "Hey, can we talk?" I asked, hoping she would agree. "Sure," she replied, her voice cautious. We met at a quiet cafe. I wanted to explain everything to her, to make her understand my decision to leave and assure her that it wasn't her fault. As we sat down, I looked into her eyes, trying to find the right words. "Kalila, I'm sorry if I hurt you," I began. "I'm going through a lot right now, and I didn't realize how my actions would affect you." She looked at me, her expression softening. I don't want you to go, Scott. You've been like a father to me." "I know, and I promise I'll still be here for you," I assured her. "But I need to do this for myself, to find some peace and start over." She nodded slowly, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand. Just don't disappear on us, okay?" "I won't," I promised. "We'll stay in touch, and I'll always be here if you need me." We hugged tightly, and in that moment, I felt a sense of closure. I knew leaving was the right decision, but it didn't mean I had to cut ties with those who mattered to me. As I drove away from the cafe, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it head on. I had a long journey ahead, but with the support of my loved ones, I knew I could navigate whatever came my way. As we stood there, united and stronger than ever, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we could face them. The road to healing and happiness was long, but with the love and support of my family, I was ready to take the first step. The following weeks were a whirlwind of adjustments and new beginnings. Linda moved out of the house, and while it was a painful process for all of us, it was also a necessary one. Annabelle stayed with us often, helping Kalila and me prepare for the baby. The closeness and laughter we shared during those times reminded me of what it truly meant to be a family. One sunny afternoon, Kalila and I were sitting on the porch, sipping iced tea and enjoying the warmth of the day. Annabelle was inside, preparing a surprise dessert she had insisted on making for us. "Can you believe how much things have changed?" Kalila asked, resting her hand on her growing belly. I smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "It's been a roller coaster, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm just grateful to have you and Annabelle by my side." Kalila's eyes sparkled as she looked at me. "We're going to make this work, Scott. We're going to build a beautiful life together." "I know," I replied, my heart swelling with love, "and I promise to always be here for you, for our child, and for Annabelle." Just then, Annabelle burst through the door, holding a tray with a freshly baked pie. "Surprise! I made your favorite, Dad, apple pie with a twist of cinnamon." Kalila and I laughed as Annabelle set the tray down and joined us on the porch. The scent of the pie filled the air, mingling with the sounds of birds chirping and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. As we enjoyed the pie and shared stories, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of peace. The tumultuous past was behind us, and the future stretched out like a vast open road. It was a journey I was no longer afraid to take, because I knew I had my family with me. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky painted itself in hues of orange and pink, Kalila and I sat in the living room, discussing our plans for the future. "Have you thought about names for the baby?" I asked, caressing her belly. Kalila grinned. "I have a few in mind, but I want us to decide together." We spent the next hour tossing around names, laughing, and imagining what our child's future might look like. The bond between us grew stronger with each passing moment, and I knew that we were laying the foundation for a life filled with love and joy. Annabelle joined us after finishing her phone call with a friend. "Hey, what are you two lovebirds up to?" she teased, plopping down on the couch next to us. "We were just discussing baby names," Kalila said, smiling at Annabelle. "Do you have any suggestions?" Annabelle's eyes lit up. "Oh, I have tons. How about Emma for a girl and Ethan for a boy?" Kalila and I exchanged glances, both of us nodding in agreement. "Those are beautiful names," I said. "We'll definitely consider them." As the night wore on, we continued to talk and laugh, the warmth of our home enveloping us in a cocoon of love and security. The future, once uncertain and daunting, now seemed bright and full of promise. In the days that followed, I settled into a new routine. I continued to work at my job, grateful for the flexibility it offered, and I spent as much time as possible with Kalila and Annabelle. We decorated the nursery together, each piece of furniture and every little detail a testament to the love we felt for our growing family. One evening, while Kalila and I were putting the finishing touches on the nursery, she turned to me, her eyes filled with emotion. "Scott, I just want you to know how much I love you. You've given me so much happiness and hope for the future." I pulled her into my arms, holding her close. "I love you too, Kalila, more than words can express. You've brought so much light into my life, and I can't wait to raise our child together." The months flew by, and before we knew it, it was time for the baby to arrive. The labor was long and exhausting, but Kalila was a warrior, and I was by her side every step of the way. When our baby girl was finally born, the room filled with her cries, and tears of joy streamed down our faces. Annabelle was there too, her excitement palpable as she held her new baby sister for the first time. "She's perfect," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Welcome to the world, Emma." Our lives had changed in ways we could never have imagined. But as I looked around at my family, I knew that every struggle and every hardship had been worth it. We had found our way back to each other, and we had built a new life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. And as I held little Emma in my arms, I knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together, as a family. "Now that I've captured you, you must be feeling terrible about abandoning us. But be a man, not a mouse. I still don't understand why you left us." Annabelle was heartbroken. "No," I said. "What do you mean by no?" she asked. "We need to start somewhere, Scott. So how about that apology?" Suddenly, the office door crashed open, hitting the wall. Kalila emerged with fire in her eyes. "How about I put my foot up your ass?" she screamed. "He has nothing to apologize for." "So now it is clear," Linda said. "You dashed off to get knee-deep in a 20-year-old slut. Jesus, did it have to be your daughter's best friend?" Annabelle has been bawling her eyes out over this woman, unaware that she has stolen her father. "None of that is true," Kalila replied. "How the hell do you know?" Linda snapped. She returned to the door and opened it. "Annabelle, come in, honey," she said. I assumed she was joking, but then my daughter entered the room. She stepped straight past her mother and hugged me. She then went over to Kalila and hugged her too. She softly rubbed Kalila's hardly perceptible bump and shrieked. Wait, hissed Linda. "Did you know they were together? And please do not tell me she is pregnant. I'm too old to care for a baby." Kalila and I exchanged looks, both of which indicated that my ex was insane. "Annabelle, why the heck didn't you tell me?" Linda asked. "Mom, you drove him away," Annabelle explained. "How?" Linda asked. "How did I drive him away? I was the best wife in the entire freaking planet. He left us completely broke. He left us with nothing. Annabelle needed a job to stay in school. Annabelle, I answered. Mom, I don't have a job, Annabelle explained. Daddy's still paying for all of my stuff. What? Linda asked. You've been lying to me the entire time. You could have helped out. Why? Annabelle asked. Everybody appeared to be cheerful. If it isn't broken, don't fix it. How in the hell was everyone happy? Linda asked. Mom, you have been treating Daddy and me like crap for years, Annabelle replied. I got out by moving to the dorms. When Daddy could no longer handle it, he departed. Kalila has always been infatuated with Daddy. I didn't realize they were together at first. To be honest, I disliked it at first, but they make each other happy. Wait until I tell her mother, Linda stated. Good luck with that, Kalila said, laughing. First of all, I am 22 years old. I am old enough to do whatever I want. And secondly, my mother already knows. I called her the day we departed. Scott made me call her. Linda collapsed. She sat on the sofa, shaking her head. Why, Scott? She asked. Okay, things weren't perfect, but they were improving. We needed to discuss things, not divide it up. I simply don't understand. It was mostly your boyfriend. That's why I left, I said. What boyfriend? She laughed. You are the only man I have ever loved. Do you call the way you treated me love? I asked. I can do without it. I can do without your falsehoods. I caught you, Linda. I arrived home early and found you banging him. That's why I left. What? Linda babbled. We've been together for so long that I knew all of your moves, Linda. That's what I stated. I noticed a trail of garments leading to the stairs. I overheard the voices. The entire home smelled like sex. In the meantime, you and I were having sex around once a month. I was pissed. I got hurt. I did not want to be there anymore. I imagined you'd be happy. Oh, God, she exclaimed. This is all a horrible misunderstanding, honey. There is nobody. I swear I have not touched another man since we first met. I can take a lie detector test if you want. Oh, for God's sake, Mom, Annabelle exclaimed. Tell the truth for once. What do you mean, honey? Asked Linda, uncomfortably. Dad, she thinks I don't know what goes on because I still live in the dorms, Annabelle said. But I've seen things, heard things. You have a friend, Mom, don't you? Linda's face turned pale. Annabelle, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, Annabelle interrupted. You think that just because I'm not here all the time, I don't know what's happening. But I do, and I don't need an English degree to see what's right in front of me. You were never happy, and you made everyone around you miserable. Dad deserved better. He deserved to be happy. And so do I. Linda's eyes filled with tears as she looked at me. Scott, I never meant for it to be like this. I thought we could work through it, that we could fix things. I did too, Linda, I said quietly. But it takes two people to fix a marriage, and you weren't willing to put in the effort. I moved on because I had to for my own sanity, and now I've found happiness with Kalila. We deserve this chance. Linda nodded slowly, tears streaming down her cheeks. I don't know what to say. Maybe it's time to start thinking about your own happiness, Mom, Annabelle said gently. Figure out what you want and go after it, but stop dragging us into your misery. As Linda left the room, I felt a sense of closure. The truth was out, and while it wasn't easy, it was necessary. I turned to Kalila and Annabelle, both of whom looked relieved but emotional. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion, for standing by me, for understanding. Kalila smiled and took my hand. We're a family, Scott. We stick together. Annabelle nodded, hugging us both. We'll get through this, together. As we stood there, united and stronger than ever, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we could face them. The road to healing and happiness was long, but with the love and support of my family, I was ready to take the first step. I have no idea how or when it started, but everyone in the area, nobody in town likes Mom. She's out of money and wants to sell the house because her work pays so little. But she can't sell the house since even though you departed and let her stay, it's in your name only. I stared at Linda, who hung her head. But we lived there for years, I replied. Why are they suddenly hating her over there? Because they're a bunch of bigoted, narrow-minded assholes, she replied. We have at least 5 or 6 black families in the neighborhood, I went on to say. Have they all moved out? Scott, Annabelle is correct. You and Kalila appear really pleased. Annabelle, you should have seen her charge out of the room as I cursed your father out. I think they make a cute couple, Linda stated. Perhaps we could all be happy. What haven't you told me, Linda? I asked. Wait, do our neighbors hate you because you live with a black man? It is none of their business. Wait a minute. Nobody gave a damn when your friend Susan married a guy from Nigeria. Walton and Jeffrey made an effort, as far as I recall. I tried so hard to teach him how to play golf. What's actually going on? Okay, Annabelle was right, Linda muttered, wringing her hands. It's about the house. Scott, I deserve that damned house, and I need it. I need the money. You do not. Your engineering degree is essentially a license to print money, and you don't need me. You've got Kalila. The two of you are certainly not looking back. You're going to have a baby, for goodness sakes. I know you're going to buy another house. So your guy does not have a job, I asked. There is no boyfriend, she answered. All three of us gazed at her. Tell him, Mom, said Annabelle. You might as well get it out. Now that I've seen the two of them together, it's very obvious that you're not going to split them apart. Daddy is happy. Perhaps he will come up with anything. Okay, Scott, she replied. Can we speak alone? Fuck no, stated Kalila. I know you are about to spit out some stuff that I will not enjoy. Linda shrugged her shoulders. First of all, Scott, I was lying to you. We are no longer married. I divorced you due to abandonment. I like this shit already, Kalila cooed. I really enjoy it. This is my favorite shit in the entire world. Jesus, Kalila, exclaimed Annabelle. Tell us how you really feel. Linda went on. The problem was, the divorce did not work. When you divorce for abandonment, each party keeps their belongings, and since my name was not on the mortgage, it is not mine. I can't live there, nor can I sell it. I need money to relocate somewhere else. Scott, you've been gone for over 3 years. I paid all of the house's taxes. I deserved it. The house is worth over $100,000. That's what I said. Our town is small, thus the taxes are modest. They are less than $3,000 each year. If we looked at it as rent, you'd be paying less than $300 a month to rent a full house with a 2-car garage, a deck, and a pool. You will not find that anyplace if you and your guy can't. Scott, Linda, I know what I heard, I told her. It pained me more than anything else had. I loved you. Okay, she replied. You're correct, but you have the wrong concept. When we initially met, Scott, I did not have a boyfriend. You were my first boyfriend, but I was confused. You won't believe this, but I did, and I adore you. I just don't enjoy having sex with you. I do, Kalila exclaimed. We know, Kalila, Annabelle said, laughing. I don't know how it started, Linda continued. There was no specific moment, no clear event. It was a gradual drift, like a boat slowly moving away from the dock. I think it began when Annabelle went off to college. The house felt so empty, and the silence was deafening. I tried to fill it with work, with hobbies, but nothing worked. And then, one day, I met someone. It wasn't about sex at first. It was about feeling seen, feeling heard. And yes, eventually, it became physical. But it never meant I didn't love you. That doesn't change the fact that you betrayed me, Linda, I said, my voice trembling with the weight of the revelation. You chose to lie, to hide, to hurt me in ways I can't even begin to describe. Linda nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, and I am truly sorry, but Scott, I need help. I need to sell the house. I need to move on, just as you have. I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. You should have come to me. We could have worked something out. But instead, you chose deceit. I can't just forgive and forget. The house will remain in my name, but I will help you find a place. I won't leave you destitute, but I won't be manipulated either. Linda looked relieved and defeated all at once. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Kalila stepped forward, her expression softening. Let's move forward, Linda. Let's find a way to coexist peacefully for Annabelle's sake. We don't need to be best friends, but we can be civil. Annabelle nodded, tears in her eyes. This is all I ever wanted, for everyone to find peace. As we all stood there, a fragile truce hanging in the air, I realized that while the past was filled with pain and betrayal, the future held a chance for healing. It wouldn't be easy, and it would take time. But with openness and a willingness to forgive, we could all move forward. Together, yet apart, but always a family. At first, I assumed it was me. I never liked boys. I really wanted to join a band. I wasn't a bad drummer, just not a good one. But I wanted to be. You seemed pleasant. I knew you could help me, so I offered you sex if you chose me. We did it. I kept assuming that I'd eventually like it, just like most of my friends and everyone else I know. I wondered if we were doing something wrong at times, but Annabelle's birth demonstrated that our equipment worked and that we had achieved the desired outcome. So I kept it up year after year. I adored you, and you enjoyed it a lot. Many of my pals thought I was, a lesbian. That's why they gave you that strange reaction when we chose to marry. Also, why were my parents so delighted when we informed them I was pregnant? They were more concerned that I would wind up with a woman than with any man. And I mean any dude would do. As Annabelle matured, I recognized that I had also grown. You never seemed to notice or care. Scott, you loved me like crazy. Our marriage was never without love. I just loathed sex. And then about a year before you left, I met Diana. Diana Rubini? I asked, confusion lacing my words. You'd be what? It was so different, she exclaimed. I understood what I was supposed to be. What, a cheater? I asked. A liar? Scott, the world we live in is a different place than the one we grew up in, she said. Yeah, I know, I said, smirking. Muscle cars, jet planes, and hamburgers fucked up the environment. No, Scott, we're just more accepting of differences among individuals. We do not have to conform to the same rigid gender roles as our parents. Now there is enough room for everyone. Gay individuals are accepted. Transgender individuals are accepted. And I finally realized I'm a hybrid. It was quite eye-opening. I have sex with ladies and love males. You and Diana both meet various needs. Everything was perfect, she explained. I got the best of both worlds. I had you for love and family, Diana for sex. It was perfect until you ruined it. How did I began. First off, you were never supposed to find out, she said with a sigh. I've never wanted that. I needed you in my life. Our kid needed you in her life. Diana's response to me. It's just sex. Stupid. It's merely a small portion of my life. I reasoned we both have things we love and need that have nothing to do with each other. Those things that others do not see as being essential to the fabric of existence that makes us human. You don't see me going off and abandoning you because of all the time you waste in that filthy car, do you? Why should you? I asked. It's different. Kalila, is this different? Linda asked. No comment. Kalila spoke in a clipped tone. How many times over the years have I complained about that damned vehicle? She hissed. And even though my private detectives couldn't utilize it to follow you, we discovered that you were smart enough to get rid of it. I never abandoned you because of a hobby, Linda continued, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. I stayed. I loved you despite everything, Scott, but you couldn't handle one secret, one thing that didn't fit into your perfect little world. It wasn't just a secret, Linda. It was a betrayal. It was lying to my face every single day. It was pretending we were something we weren't, I replied, my voice rising. I deserved better. Annabelle deserved better. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I know I messed up, but Scott, please, we can fix this. We can find a way. No, Linda, we can't. You made your choices, and I made mine. And now I have a new life with Kalila. A life that is honest and real, I said, my voice softening. I'm sorry it ended this way, but it's time to move on. Linda looked defeated, her shoulders slumping. I guess that's it then. Annabelle stepped forward, placing a hand on her mother's shoulder. Mom, we all have to find our own paths. It's time for you to find yours. Linda nodded slowly, wiping away her tears. You're right. It's time for me to start over. As Linda left the room, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The truth had been laid bare, and while it was painful, it was also freeing. I turned to Kalila and Annabelle, both of whom looked relieved but emotional. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion, for standing by me, for understanding. Kalila smiled and took my hand. We're a family, Scott. We stick together. Annabelle nodded, hugging us both. We'll get through this, together. As we stood there, united and stronger than ever, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we could face them. The road to healing and happiness was long, but with the love and support of my family, I was ready to take the first step. Those cars are quite rare, but I'm not sure how you'd tell them apart from any other Mustang. Anyway, you purchased a different one. It's the same freaking car, Kalila stated. He just had it painted. And let me tell you, every time I drive it, I get a lecture about being extra careful. And as soon as I return, even if I'm only going to the store, he inspects every inch of the car for scratches and dents. The room suddenly went silent as a grave. "Why are you all staring at me?" she asked. I gazed at the floor. My daughter Annabelle had her mouth open in amazement, and Linda was visibly unhappy. "What?" asked Kalila. "I was married to him for longer than you've been alive," Linda said. "Kalila, my dad rarely allows anyone to sit in that car," Annabelle explained. "There are occasions when he becomes angry, even with family, if someone leans on or touches it, and he has never permitted anyone to drive that car." Kalila's face lit up, and she scooted closer to me. "So, getting back to the subject at hand," I blurted out. "In your weird-ass interpretation of things, I've had a car. Let's not forget that I bought you the exact car you desired. But since I had my automobile, does it give you the right to go out and sleep with another woman?" "You were not supposed to find out," Linda stated. "And if you did, you weren't meant to go away and abandon us. You should have spoken with me about it. We could have formed some sort of agreement." "Like what?" I said. "Things could have been good, maybe better, maybe perfect," she went on to say. "There was nothing wrong with our marriage. We no longer had a marriage," I muttered. "We had you screwing a woman on the side while occasionally giving me a monthly mercy session. That is not a marriage. If we had discussed instead of you running off like a child, we could have come up with a solution that worked for both of us." Annabelle and I both observed Kalila sniffing around you. The only thing I hadn't realized was that you were sniffing back. She could have moved in with us, and both of you. That would have been extremely messed up around the holidays, wouldn't it? I laughed. I can see us all now, you and Diana, Annabelle, and Kalila, seated around the dinner table. One huge cozy family, right? No, honey. Kalila would have simply been there to meet your requirements. Diana would have just looked after my needs, Linda explained. The rest of the time, things would have been as they always were. Nope, it wouldn't have worked, I replied. Kalila is so much more than just sex to me. She is a part of me. She is like my heartbeat. She's never distant from my mind. She is the first thing I reach for when I wake up, and the last thing I hold on to before going to bed. If she and I had gotten together under any circumstances, you and I would have split up. Wow, Annabelle giggled. Dad, I'm beginning to grasp this. You really like my best friend, don't you? I nodded. Maybe we'd better hose her down, Annabelle joked. The way you talk about her gets her all worked up. That's probably how she became pregnant. So you're saying our family is done, and there's no chance of us getting back together? Asked Linda. Are you saying that this child is more important to you than all of our years of happiness? I took a deep breath, looking Linda squarely in the eyes. Linda, our family as it was is already over. It ended when you chose to keep secrets and lies. And yes, this child, our child, represents a future built on honesty and love. Those years of happiness you speak of, they were tainted with deceit. Kalila and I have something real, something pure. I can't just walk away from that. Linda's face crumpled with emotion, tears streaming down her cheeks. I see, she whispered. I guess this is goodbye then. Annabelle stepped forward, wrapping her arms around her mother. Mom, we all have to move on. We'll still be a family, just not the way we were. Linda nodded slowly, her sobs quieting. You're right, it's time for all of us to find our own paths. As we stood there, a sense of closure washed over me. It was bittersweet, but it was necessary. We were all starting new chapters in our lives, and while the past would always be a part of us, the future was where our focus needed to be. Kalila took my hand, and Annabelle stood by my side. Together, we faced the unknown, ready to embrace whatever came next, with open hearts and unwavering support for one another. It was the beginning of a new journey, and I was grateful for the love and strength of my family to guide me through it. Yep, I replied. So, what we've meant to each other, everything we experienced, the years, damn, it has been decades. You already know what I mean. Yes, I said. Do you need time to think about it? Linda asked. Except for Kalila. You knew all of this already. So what is your true agenda? What did you need from me to bring your pathetic cheating ass all the way down here? First, Scott, what is your plan? She asked. You always have a strategy as well as a backup plan in case the first one fails. What were you planning to do? We've been here long enough that we started to feel safe, I said. With the baby on the way, I've started looking at properties. I want my child to grow up in a home with both parents, a yard, dogs, and all of the other cliches that provide a healthy foundation for life. A house, in addition to being a home, is a great investment. Even if you caught up with us, Kalila and I could always bail again and give the real estate agent permission to sell the house in our absence while we settled elsewhere. But now I find out that you and I are divorced. The image appears completely different. There are many more possibilities on the table. Kalila and I will discuss them later. I still need to know what you desire. You already know, Annabelle replied. Why else would she have dragged me all the way down here? I don't mind seeing you with my best friend. It's also interesting to see why you departed, and why Kalila suddenly vanished. She wants the house. Remember that she could not sell it since she did not possess it, even after she divorced you. She left out the part when she discovered that she couldn't obtain the house after the divorce and attempted to reverse it, but it was impossible. The judge instructed her to just marry you again. It's only fair, said Linda. How is this fair, I asked. Well, if you had divorced me properly, I would have gotten the house, she explained. The woman always gets the house. Sometimes people have to sell the house and divide the proceeds, but with you just going away and me desperately wanting the money, I ended up botching the divorce. But you caused the divorce in the first place, I replied. I only left because you cheated on me. And I paid for it, she snarled. You landed on your feet, honey. You ended up beginning fresh and getting out. Grr, almost as good as you were with me. The word you're looking for is better, I said. She shrugged her shoulders and reluctantly nodded. So, because you're better off, you can afford to be generous, she replied quietly. Unless you want me back or whatever. As I previously stated, we can resolve this to everyone's satisfaction. Nah, I replied. I am happy now. I'm even happier now that we're divorced. Where should I sign? It's not that simple, she explained. I've been having a few financial setbacks since you left, and here comes the other shoe, Kalila said, smirking. Well, remember the taxes I was paying? Stated Linda. I nodded. They sort of got away from me over the last year and a half. I'll write you a check, I hissed. Thanks, honey, she replied, but I kind of need more. More as in what? I hissed. What the heck am I supposed to do to get rid of you? Scott, she exclaimed. Why are you acting so hostile? This is not like you at all. You, Linda, are the one who cheated on me, I said. Then you went and divorced me in an attempt to steal my house. Water under the bridge, she remarked exasperatedly. I addressed all of that. I divorced you out of desperation. I needed money, and that doesn't change the fact that you betrayed me, I interrupted. You think you can just come here and make demands like nothing happened? It's not that easy. Linda sighed, looking defeated. I know, Scott. I know I messed up, but I don't have anywhere else to turn. I'm asking for your help, please. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger bubbling inside me. Fine, I'll pay the taxes, but that's it. I can't give you more than that. She nodded slowly. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Annabelle looked at me with concern. Dad, are you sure about this? I nodded. Yes, sweetheart. It's the least I can do to finally close this chapter of our lives. Linda left, and the room was filled with a heavy silence. Kalila wrapped her arms around me, offering comfort. You did the right thing, she whispered. Now we can move forward. As I held her close, I knew she was right. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one built on honesty, love, and the hope of a brighter future. Together, we would face whatever came our way, stronger than ever before. A week later, I found myself on a flight back to our old town. The legal paperwork was finalized, and it was time to put this chapter to rest. As the plane touched down, a wave of nostalgia hit me, mingled with a sense of dread. But Kalila's words echoed in my mind. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. I arrived at the house early in the morning. The neighborhood looked almost the same, but there was a palpable change, as if the walls had absorbed the years of tension and conflict. Linda was waiting for me on the front porch, looking a bit haggard but defiant. Scott, she said, trying to sound amicable, thanks for coming. Let's get this over with. I followed her inside, and we sat down with the notary and the real estate agent. Linda handed me the documents, and I signed them with a steady hand. She signed her part, and the notary stamped everything, making it official. There, it's done, I said, standing up. You have what you wanted, Linda. Now let's stick to our agreement and stay out of each other's lives. Linda nodded, but there was a glint in her eye that made me uneasy. Sure, Scott, whatever you say. I didn't stay to chat. Instead, I took a walk around the neighborhood, reminiscing about the past. I visited a few old friends who were surprised but happy to see me. It felt good to reconnect, even briefly, but I knew my heart was no longer here. Before heading back to the airport, I decided to visit Annabelle. She was working at a local cafe, and when she saw me, her face lit up with a smile. "Dad, I wasn't expecting you," she said, hugging me tightly. "I had some business to take care of," I explained. "I wanted to see you before heading back." We sat down and chatted for a while, catching up on her life and my plans with Kalila. She seemed genuinely happy for me, and I felt a surge of pride for the strong, independent woman she had become. "Kalila's lucky to have you," Annabelle said, squeezing my hand. "You both deserve to be happy." "Thanks, sweetheart, and remember, I'm always here for you, no matter what." As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of closure. The flight back to my new life felt like a new beginning. Kalila met me at the airport, her smile radiant despite the visible bump of our growing baby. "How did it go?" she asked, taking my hand. "It's done," I replied, pulling her into a hug. "We're free to move forward." Back home, we started planning for the future in earnest. We found a beautiful house with a spacious yard, perfect for raising our child. Life settled into a happy rhythm as we prepared for the baby's arrival. A few months later, Kalila gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. We named her Grace, and she brought a joy into our lives that I had never experienced before. Every time I looked at her, I was reminded of how far I had come and how much I had gained. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Kalila turned to me with a soft smile. "Scott, do you ever think about the past? About Linda?" I shook my head, holding her hand. "No, Kalila, I don't. You and Grace are my future. That's all that matters." She leaned into me, and we watched as the sky turned shades of orange and pink. The past was behind us, and the future was bright. With Kalila and Grace by my side, I knew we could face anything together. For you to sign as well. I'll have a legally binding contract that states any additional contact between us that you initiate breaches the agreement, and you owe me everything you receive out of it. Linda just grinned. "See what I mean, girls?" she said, smirking. "He's providing an opportunity for us to reconcile. He didn't mention what would happen if he called me. I can already picture it. A few months later, he'll recall what we did and phone me for a booty call. And Kalila, honey, you are as cute as a bug's ear, but you don't have much upstairs, if you get what I mean. Scott will miss these." Both females made gagging sounds as she stroked and lifted her own large bore, drooping boobs. "This is a lot to process," I explained. "I have a lot to think about. Do you need my assistance figuring it out?" Linda smirked. "We always did our best thinking in bed." I needed to catch Kalila before she punched Linda again. "That's one of the things I have to think about," I replied. All those years, you never really enjoyed it, and I thought—" She interrupted. "Scott, Linda, how could you handle it?" I blurted out. "It must have been torture. It must have been like being raped repeatedly for years." "I'm sorry. I'm Scott." "Perhaps you should let me do the thinking," she added. "You've got this all wrong. There is a significant distinction between torture and what we did. There is also a significant distinction between love and sex. I loved you. I still do. I enjoyed being close to you. I enjoyed caressing you. I enjoyed offering you my body to make you happy. I just wanted something else to make me happy. I know just how to explain it. You adore that ridiculous automobile. The thought of someone else driving it makes you want to throw up. But you let the teeny bopper over there drive it because your feelings for her outweigh your horror at someone touching that car. Do you see that?" "I guess," I answered. "They all knew, the entire time." "What are you talking about?" she asked. "Our friends," I explained. "That was years ago. They were all aware of you at the time, but no one said anything." "It was the times, baby," she explained. "They all wanted—" "Don't call him baby again," Kalila screamed. "They all wanted a normal story," Linda continued. "They wanted to see me barefoot, pregnant, and wedded to a man. Things weren't the same back then. I was just the punchline in some weird fucking joke," I blurted out. "My entire goddamned existence was wasted. Fate fucked both of us. You, the closet carpet muncher, were being tortured by a man. I was stuck with a lady who despised having sex with me and would never love me the way I needed. The gods must still be laughing at us. We are a joke. We are fate's bitch. Scott, fate has lost, she said. You got through it. You ended up with far more than fate ever meant. Look at Kalila and tell me you aren't delighted to have her. How many 40-something men find themselves with a smoking hot 20-something woman who practically worships them? I love Kalila, I said, but she came into my life like a blessing, not a consolation prize. Kalila stepped closer, wrapping her arms around me. And you're not a prize, Scott. You're my love, my partner, my future. Don't let her poison what we have. Linda's smirk faded. So that's it then? You're really choosing her over everything we've been through? Yes, Linda, I said firmly. I'm choosing happiness, honesty, and real love over years of pretending and misery. She looked away, a mix of anger and sorrow in her eyes. Fine, just get the house stuff done and stay out of my life. Gladly, I replied. Kalila and I walked out, hand in hand, leaving the past behind. As we drove back to our new life, I felt a weight lift